call the virtual town commission special meeting agenda to order Thursday, August 13th at 12:09 p.m. It's your turn, Vice Mayor.
All right, should we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? Or you want to do the roll call first?
Roll call.
Roll call,
All right,
okay.
roll call. Go for it.
Commissioner Shoemaker? He's the way.
Here.
Okay, Commissioner David?
Here.
Commissioner Gossett Seidman?
Here.
Vice Mayor Bobby?
Present.
Town Manager Labadie?
Present.
And Finance Director Lala?
Here.
Thank you. And now we can stand for the pledge.
Wi-Fi here sucks. It's not coming in.
Sorry, John.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic.
Which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
All right, Linelda, go ahead and go with whatever the next item is, because I don't have anything
Okay.
besides the agenda packet.
Okay, sure. We're on to item 4, discussion and acceptance of the proposed budget for fiscal year 2020, 2021 for general fund operating departments, public works departments.
Okay, so in your package, you have the Public Works write-up. It shows changes in measurables. And then you have the budget variances on page 4, where you'll see in personnel, we have a slight increase to account for natural escalation of wages and healthcare costs. And then we have a decrease in the operating expense for a total decrease year over year for the Public Works Department. And we will get to water and sewer at the end of the meeting. This is just the maintenance component and the general fund component of the Public Works Department. So we'll do Public Works, general fund. At the end of the meeting, we get to the water and sewer enterprise funds separately. So this is, if you go to page 14, you'll see 13 and 14 show you the expenses for Public Works, and then you have your individual detail sheets for each of those accounts. Again, we have a general decrease in operating expense and a very slight increase in personnel expense.
Marshall, what are the professional fees they tend to pay? I know that was one of the decreases. What are they actually usually? Where do we pay professional fees to?
For our GIS consultant, they have some fees on a year-to-year basis to get the system as we roll it out, bring up the software, do a little bit of training of personnel, and to build the shape files and layers in concert with Pat and his team to make sure we get the water, sewer infrastructure, storm infrastructure, roads, hydrants, get all those things mapped. And then the other one is would be like just general engineering as it relates to various subject matters in the Public Works Department.
Got it. All right, should we run through questions?
Yeah, mostly for this though, the engineering is going to be towards streets. So anytime we have issues with our roads, streets, some drainage, things of that nature that don't specifically fall into water or sewer, this is the catch-all for those engineering charges.
Got it. Okay, so should we run through commissioner questions then?
Sure.
John, any questions?
No, at this time, actually, I'm trying to work out a connectivity problem I have because I'm at a hotel.
Got it. The good news is we can see you and hear you well.
Did you hear that?
Yeah, no, you seem pretty good, actually. Evelyn, any
Oh, really?
questions?
No,
Oh.
it seems pretty straightforward to me. I don't see anything that we didn't see last year. And mostly it's either less or just slightly higher. And a number of things are exactly the same. So it really hasn't changed much since last year. Salaries go up, but that's gonna be every year.
Got it. Peggy, any questions?
No, not really. There are a few bumps in the road where I'm not clear on a couple of the methods of coming to the dollar amounts, but it's just probably my.
Well, we got Matt on, so he can maybe help it if you've got questions.
Sure.
Well, just a couple of things. When you calculate the, for example, the reserves, how does that factor into the entire operation?
Are you referring to Public Works or are you referring to some other part?
The Public Works.
There are no reserves in public works. Reserves will come in your water and sewer funds.
Well, we have a contingency reserve item on page 9, a contingency reserve line item.
That's
I'm
in
not-
the water department.
That's in the water, correct?
Yep.
I'm
We're
just not clear
talking
what that
water.
is exactly.
That's the next section. We're on the Public Works section, which is a little bit above it. We didn't get
Okay.
to water yet.
Page. So which page are you on, Greg?
For the Public Works, it is that table in the center on page, gray box, page 8, but then it also has a number 4 in the lower right corner.
My number 4 is blank. Okay, move on
No,
because,
no. Well, for what you're looking in the gray box, go to page 8.
page 8. Okay. Oh, I was
It's
on the
in
next
middle.
page. Okay, then no
Yeah.
questions on this page. My mistake, sorry.
Okay.
Problem. I don't have any questions as well, so I guess we need a motion then, right? So I will make a motion to approve the Public Works budget. It doesn't seem to have an item number, so I'll make a move. I'll move to approve the Public Works budget as presented.
Second,
All in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No opposed. Okay, great. So we can move on to the next one. Pass it back to you, Marshall.
Okay, so that takes us to item 5, which is the discussion and acceptance of the proposed budgets for fiscal year for special revenue funds. And there are 2 special revenue funds. We are going to start with the building department. Just to set that up, as you recall, we moved that over to a special revenue fund because it has to be a self-sustaining enterprise within the general fund. So this acts independently. Within that, you'll see some operational changes and the variances. You get the smaller one and the personnel costs, and then you have operating expenses. The biggest part of that change is the adjustment to the administrative charge. That will be basically dollars for the management of that department back to the general fund for commission, my time, Matt, IT, those type of internal service charges, which we call an administrative charge. We move those up for next year. So that's where you see the lion's share of that change. There's reduction in capital outlay. Looking at that, we're projecting revenues of around $894,000 last year. Next year, moving forward, and then presenting a balanced budget. Again, we're still deploying the hybrid model of the building department. So you will see cap charges in there. That's our consultant that provides the inspection services. Year over year, the difference that we see here, Jeff was able to make an arrangement with CAP to have a structural engineer. So we used to have a professional services line for about $25,000 for structural engineering. CAP can provide that service at a lesser cost. So that's why you see an increase in the CAP charges year over year, is that we moved those potential costs for structural engineering review into the CAP consulting fees. Other than that, again, this is a self-sustaining fund, and if there are more revenues than expenses, those go into a reserve for the building department to carry year over year. Other than that, those are the kind of the highlights. Jeff Remus is with us today. If you have any questions regarding operations, We've been sending some monthly reports. I think I sent one Monday. Today's Thursday. Monday, I sent one out, and you could kind of see the volume of work, the inspections and permit issues for July. So if you have any questions, we could be more than glad to answer them.
I got a bunch, but I'll save mine to the end. So we'll go through. Hey, Jeff, welcome. Thanks for joining us, by the way. You're muted, so there you go. Unmute yourself.
Unmuted.
Oh, look, we have the mayor as well.
Until I have to speak.
Hello, sir.
Yay.
You know, I had a crazy problem. On my town computer, I wasn't getting any emails today. And I kept rebooting and rebooting, and I couldn't pick up any of today's emails. I was getting them on the town phone, but so anyways, I just forwarded the invite for this over to my personal computer. So I'm on my personal computer. So sorry for the delay. I'm glad you were able to proceed without me. And here we are.
So I'll update you. We approved the Public Works budget as presented. We just started on building. We haven't asked any questions yet. So that is where we are.
Oh, great. So that would be
You
on.
want to take over the helm, and you can start with commissioners asking questions on it.
Okay, just, that would be page 9 then, correct?
No,
29.
building department
I think it's
starts
20.
on
29.
28.
28.
28.
6, actually. 26, it starts and goes through 47.
26. That's building department.
That's
I
where
think
we
we're
are.
on.
Yep.
Boy, you covered a lot of ground.
Nope, this is only the second
No.
item. We're jumping around a little bit, I
We
think.
jumped,
Oh,
yeah, we
okay.
didn't.
Okay, so we're open for questions. Guess we go to John?
Can I defer? I'm just trying to catch up here. I just resolved my own connectivity issues. I was trying to use my PC with the hotel Wi-Fi. It didn't come into everything was okay. So now I'm using my phone. In the background, I've got my PC with all of the building department data. So can I be the second or third one?
He's gone. He just dropped. So we'll come back to him.
Come back around to him, sure.
All right, let's move on then. Evelyn?
No, I don't really have any questions. Let's see what somebody else says. Maybe I'll pick up from there.
Okay, Peggy?
Yes. I just wondered if I could ask of Jeff and Marshall about how often do our CAP contractors step in and give us an assist? Is it a daily thing, weekly? I'm personally very pleased with the building department. Compared to 3-4 years ago, it's unbelievably professional and competent. And so I want to publicly say that I'm just very pleased with how wonderfully the building department has been constructed and staffed. But I just wondered how often the CAP guys fill in. I mean, it's an incredibly great company. So if he could give us an idea.
Sure. Did I unmute myself? Yeah.
You're good.
So the CAP government guys and girls come down here on a daily basis during regular working hours, and they are performing anywhere from, we've had as little as 7 to as many as 30 plus inspections a day. And those are all different disciplines where they are providing to us different experts in those areas, in those different disciplines, separate plumbing inspector, mechanical inspector, structural inspector. I've been doing the majority of the electrical, except lately. I've had them do the electrical because I'm really tied up with the BSNA transfer over and catching up with all the plan review. In addition to the inspections on some of the more involved plan reviews where I have to send something to CAP to help out with maybe more complicated mechanical plumbing, or swimming pool. But they're here every single day.
Amazing. And would you say that everything's running smoothly and competently and it's working out well for everyone?
So far it is. I'm pretty content with them. Obviously, I come from them, so I know some of the
Sure.
inner workings, the ins and outs. But I've been very happy as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if you've heard anything on your end, but we've been pretty content with everything. And anywhere we've had some hiccups, we've addressed it immediately.
No, I've no issues at all. I have colleagues, friends in Miami-Dade who have used CAP for years, and they're very pleased and said nothing but wonderful things. So I just wondered really how busy we are compared to having had one person in the building department plus a few staff, including Carol, 3 years ago. So it's just amazing how busy you are.
There's a lot going on because things are being different. In the past, one person was really handling everything, and you can't do your job adequately when you have to do everything.
Yes, certainly.
Something has to suffer, and right now we're actually able to perform everything at a much higher level.
Yes, I understand. And do you see there's not really a drop off, or is there a drop off of permitting and building and whatnot with the COVID and all, or are you pretty much maintaining the same level of business?
I think we're depressed a little bit in comparison to last year, but we've had some larger projects come in, which from a monetary standpoint has helped out, from a revenue standpoint has helped out. Many of the buildings were shut down, or some still aren't allowing any construction. Therefore, it has reduced the number of inspections that we normally perform.
Right.
But other than that, we are still really moving forward, and we're moving in a good direction. I don't expect next year to be as good as this year has been, but maybe I'll be surprised if things change, hopefully sometime soon.
Okay, thank you very much, Jeff. And thank you for all your hard work, and to the staff. Appreciate it greatly.
I'll let them know. Thank you.
Greg?
Thanks, Mayor. Hey, Jeff, a few quick questions for you. You had mentioned the structural engineer now coming through CAP. Is that for building only in terms of homes and condos, or is that a structural engineer that can also assist in seawalls, riprap, that sort of stuff?
Absolutely, 100%. And that's what made it so convenient, is I was able to speak with Judson from CAP and cut a deal with him that for the same rate that we get a plans examiner, which is what I was doing for primarily for Highland when I worked for them, for the same hourly rate, we're actually getting a structural engineer to review. So I work very closely with Ingrid, and we go over seawalls, boat lifts, docks, and everything else. And one of the bigger things that we definitely have looked at on every single one is we look at the stormwater management and, for people to retain the water on their property. So with all of the brand new homes going in, we've received, extensive drawings that we have peer reviewed by the CAP engineer.
Great. Then I noticed from fiscal year 1920 versus 2021, there's quite a jump in building permits, 1,200 versus 2,700 on page 29. Any color on that?
Yes.
What's going on there?
That's a great question, actually. So under the current system that we have with SmartGov, when someone builds a home, for example, or remodels a condominium, they pull one permit. And within that permit, you have all of the subcontractors. With the new BS&A system, we're going to be more with the times, and each separate discipline will be their own permit, a separate permit number, but they will be under what's called a project number with BS&A, but they will all have separate permits. So that's the reason for the difference. We figure it'll probably triple because we'll be adding at a minimum mechanical, electrical, and plumbing to every permit.
I think that's what Boca and Delray both do now, right?
Yes, that's how they do it. Boynton does it. Most other municipalities do it that way. There's a legal reason for doing that. That helps protect the subcontractors actually a little bit more. Yep. If a homeowner, for instance, isn't happy with the GC, when the GC is in charge of the project, and he's the one who actually signs the permit applications for his subs. So when they lose the GC, everybody's off the job. With the
Yeah.
new GC gets replaced, your subs are still there with their own basically, with their own permitting process.
Makes sense. I love it.
It's a much better way to work.
Better
Excellent.
control.
The 5 total positions, those are all internal positions, right? Those aren't cap people as counted as positions. That's you and Ingrid, code enforcement, stuff like that.
Correct, right.
Perfect. That's what I
And
thought.
Carol and Lindsay, that was correct. There's just the 5 of us.
Great. And then last question, building code 6th edition versus 7th edition. Is there what are the major differences and what are the towns around us using? I know
Well-
that's one of your deliverables to eventually move from 6th to 7th.
Right, so everyone in the entire state is currently on a 6th. The state mandates, and they're the ones who tell us what we're supposed to be in. We are currently in the 6th edition. The entire state is in the 6th edition. We have no choice but to update to the 7th edition, which was just published. I did order the books. They're supposed to be delivered. As soon as they receive payment, they're going to deliver them to us. And then at that point, I can dig in the books and give you more of an assessment of what's going to change. I know on the electrical end of things, we're going to be now in the 2017 National Electric Code. We're always like one electrical code cycle behind for this how it seems to work out. So we're going to have more changes on the electrical end with arc faults. Docks and marinas are going to be held to the same standard for residential homes that they are now for commercial docks and marinas. So that's for more electrical safety. But there aren't a ton of really big changes because we're still in the same wind zone. We're still in the same, exposure category.
Got it. Great. That ends my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay, no problem.
Thank you, Greg. Jeff, I just want to mimic a little bit what Peggy was saying. Generally, I get complaints about getting permits, et cetera, and responses or lack thereof from the department. And I have not gotten any. So no news is very good news. Okay.
Well, so far, I am expecting you to eventually get some complaints.
Well, it's always going to
Then
happen.
it wouldn't be a building department if you don't get complaints.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. Okay. But just wanted to pass that along. Okay.
Excellent. I'll let the staff know.
Also, one quick thing kind of off to the side. We get a report each month on kind of the details of all of the different activities that occurred during the month. But unfortunately, there's no reference to that. So I don't know really whether it's good or it's bad. It's just kind of a dump. So can you reference that either year to date or comparison to the previous year, same month?
Yeah, you tell me what you want and we will reference.
Just some way so we get some sense of the trend, is the data increasing, decreasing? I just don't know when I see the numbers, whether it's good or it's bad.
And that's not a problem. I would like to kind of hold that off until October when we implement BSNA because they have a much more robust reporting system and we can then maybe put things into, and I can put things into like a graph format for you.
Well, that would be fine, just so that we get some sense as to how we're doing, not just what that
What we're
month
doing.
was.
Okay, not a problem.
Because it's meaningless right now, at least to me.
It's informational.
Okay.
That's it. All right.
Just another quick question. We see the operating expenses going up 60,000, almost 61,000. Yet you're projecting permit value to decrease rather significantly. But we're looking at a 22% increase in operating expenses. You have detailed why, but we've got one thing with revenue going down, but we have expenses going up. Do you want to shed more light on it besides what you have detailed here?
Well, I think as far as the projections for the revenue coming in for permitting, I was actually trying to be a little more conservative because of my concern with COVID. Before all this happened, I was able to track things, see where we were going, and have a good idea. But now I'm a little apprehensive for that, so I felt more comfortable bringing that back a little bit. And honestly, with COVID, rather than me being able to graph things and look at historical data, I almost felt like I was just throwing a dart against a board. And I think that may be a component of it as far as that's concerned. As far as the increase, a lot of it was reduced initially, but we realized that we're probably going to be getting busier. So that's why the cap bill seemed to have crept up a little bit and maybe created that little difference.
Well, we tend to agree with you on the potential reduction in the permit value, the result of COVID. Is there anything do you want to take a second look at your operating expenses?
I think the biggest factor is going to be the cap bill, and that's going to be the one that we can actually control more. Right now, for the last few months, we've been able to keep the cap bill actually under $10,000 per month for about the last 4 months.
Great.
So I honestly do not expect the cap bill to reach that height. But I think in order to balance the budget,
There you go.
you know, we kind of needed to build a little buffer in there just for that purpose.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you. I have no more questions. Great. Anybody need to come back on anything?
Mayor, if I could, I would add to that, we're very conservative on that cap gov number. Don't expect to reach the expenditure level that is appropriated there.
Thank you. Okay, thanks, Matt. Anything else, or shall we move on?
I think all we need is a motion and a survey.
Okay,
Just a moment. This is John Shoemaker.
sure, John.
Okay, you can hear me now, right?
Yes, sir.
All right, so I've maybe to pass this on to some of you. If you have a weak Wi-Fi connection, which I'm definitely suffering right now because I'm in a hotel. So I'm using it for video. I can see all of you fine, and apparently you can see me, but it won't transmit audio. So I'm using my phone for audio. So I've got two ways of listening in. Anyways, now that I've resolved that, my question about permits is, while it is gone down, the time it takes to get a permit, do you have any metrics on that? Do you keep any track of how long it typically takes? Because if anything, the only complaints I've heard is it just takes a long time to get approval on a permit. Am I wrong?
That is something that has historically been an issue with many departments. It is honestly not an issue with our department whatsoever. And I can say that because a lot of the time it's miscommunication between the contractor trying to save. Since we've gone online, we often, we ask for the email address for the owners. And now what we're doing is when we send out deficiency notices to the contractors because they've submitted incorrect information, in many cases, the owners are being copied on that. So that's why you're having a decrease, because now they know where the problem lies. So the majority of the time that there is a delay, it's completely justified on our end because number one, we often don't receive the right information from the applicant, which is normally the contractor. Then it takes them a long time to respond to us. And then the next item is that when they respond, they often respond with the wrong information and we have to ask for it yet again. So the longest part of the whole process is completely with the contractor. I can tell you that while I was sitting in with the planning meeting this morning, I had my video off and I had already done about 4 or 5 plan reviews. And some of those came in the same day and they're out the same day. So when you hear that it takes a long time, sometimes they also get confused between the fact that they have to go to planning and zoning first. You know, they have to get zoning approval. So they're trying to, planning board approval. So they're looking at that entire time frame from planning approval to the building. And the building component really doesn't start until planning is finished. But I can wholeheartedly tell you, and if you have any specifics, I'll be more than happy to have anyone come in here and I will show you the timeline, because now it's all documented electronically in the computer. So I would be more than happy to address any specific issues with that.
John, I can back him up on that. If it's a
Yeah.
run of the mill, condo that's being done, the problems of the past are definitely in the past. Stuff moves through that department very quickly now.
Mr.
All
Mayor,
right.
Yes.
I would like to throw out an example that just amazed me. I had a call about 6-8 weeks ago from a HOA president, said, we can't get this dock approved. It's taking 5 months. I said, okay, send it to Marshall. He sent it on to the rest of the building department. It turned out the contractor had not submitted a survey, had not submitted email address. The owners were unaware of this. And then to top it off, he had the wrong street, house address.
There you go.
And
Yeah,
so I'm just giving you one example of a recent situation. So
Yep.
the months of delay were due to mistakes.
yeah. The vast majority that are applied for correctly run through that department very quickly. The problems of the past are definitely in the past.
Yes, sir.
We're not experiencing those anymore.
We want to keep them in the past, and it'll all be like that.
For sure.
Yay, Jeff.
You
I
got
have a
it.
question.
Okay,
When does something have to go to the planning board before you get a permit, and when can you just get a permit?
So items such as seawalls and boat lifts, major modifications, new construction, additions, all of those items have to go to the planning board. So it's those things like that that have to be looked at, have to go through Ingrid first and through that process and go to a planning board meeting to go to, and then once it's approved, then we will allow them to apply for a permit. Part of the process in the past, and I know it's in the past, was that they applied for one permit and it included everything. So they never really knew really where they were. Now everything's online. We have planning and zoning separated from building. It's very transparent and you always know where you're at, and you can always go online and check where you're at or call if you can't figure it out. We have a great staff to help everyone to work with everything online.
So then generally interior modifications do not have to go through that.
In there, I can't think of anything that you could do on the interior of your home that would require planning board approval, other than maybe changing the use. Like maybe from a single family home to a bed and breakfast.
Sure.
okay.
You
Are we
don't want
ready for a
those.
motion?
Sure. I move that we accept the building department budget as presented.
Got a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Done. Jeff, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
My pleasure. Have a great day, folks.
You too. Okay, we're on to the discretionary sales tax, surtax fund. And you want to help me out as to where that is in our package?
Yes, that's page 49 and 50, and Matt's going to walk you through it.
Okay.
I think he is, unless he's hiding now.
Not hiding.
He's getting off the screen quickly.
Ah,
To move to the same page as you're seeing there.
Okay, page 50.
The detail of the special revenue fund is shown on pages 50 and 51. But the big story as part of the discretionary sales surtax is that we're expecting it to drop about 50,000 in terms of collections next year as a result of COVID-19 economic impacts. Have some money. This is a fund that is the sales tax funds remain in this special revenue fund and are rolled over from year to year. So we are using funds from the prior year to continue the crosswalk improvements project. That is providing some of the funding there. Also, it will fund a new roof for Town Hall. We've been playing whack-a-mole with leaks on the, and it is to the point where it needs to be replaced. It's a pretty significant project of $250,000.
Do we have a timeline on that?
We are putting together an RFP right now. I would suspect that it'd probably be out in September, you think, Marshall?
Yeah, it'll probably be in the next, I would say, week. Eric Marmer and Matt's office had put together the invitation to bid. Legal just looked at it. So we got a beautiful 35-page invitation to bid to get a roofer in here. That should be hitting the streets. You know, even, I think Eric's just waiting for me to give the final ones through to make sure all the edits are in, and we're good to go. And we'll probably give them, you know, 3 to 4 weeks. I haven't looked at the dates for timing, but once we hit the streets, we usually give them 3 to 4 weeks to submit the documents. We'll review it, find the lowest responsible bidder, and then bring it to the commission for approval. So most likely we'll be doing the work in October, is my guess.
Thank you.
As I said, those are the two projects, the replacement of the Town Hall roof and the continuation of the crosswalks project, which will be starting this year based on a contract that was approved recently by the commission. And
Yeah, so we, everybody signed that contract. We have a fully executed contract. The vendor has put the order in, internal order for the equipment. So, and has reached out to FDOT. So they're doing a good job helping us coordinate everything with FDOT. And then Hinterland, who's a contractor with us for emergency repairs, again, has concrete line items so they can do some concrete work. And the crosswalk contractor will work with our other contractor to see where we need to put in the landings near the pedestrian activated signals. So we're in play. It's a go. There were some questions on lights, so we got them as bright as they can go by code. We put as many lights on it as we can per the code that's allowed. FDOT has changed a few rules since 14. But we're getting the brightest and best, and we should be, I'm hoping, in the ground here very shortly, start the work.
And what is your timeline on completion on that project?
I just had that written out here. I'll say 120 days as the outside, but I'm hoping to get it done a lot quicker, but about 120 days.
Great, great. Okay, thank you. Anybody have any questions on this without me calling each one of you individually? Been pretty cut and dry.
Ms. Mayor?
Yeah, sure, John.
So I guess I feel that it's a no-brainer. We have to fix the roof. I mean, my goodness, without a roof, we're in trouble. On the crosswalks, you know, I know that some residents are quite concerned about our past decision at the last meeting and are looking for brighter lights and, you know, bigger and better, I guess. And I guess from what I'm hearing that the type of signs and lights are more than satisfactory. I thought, frankly, the ones that I saw in Deerfield were satisfactory. Can you give me some comparison between what you think we're getting versus what's already installed in Deerfield?
What we're not getting in Deerfield is we're not getting the pattern pavement or embedded in-road lights. That's going to be, if you will, phase 2. That one, we're gonna, Commissioner Gossett-Simon's going to put together the appropriation request to get money from the state to do it. And then most likely it would be timed with our 3R project to get that phase. The current phase, you may have received an email, I think, from Mr. Bowden as it relates to more and more lights on there. And he sent a sample to us where the sign and the beacons flashed. I asked the contractor if that's a potential option. They brought forward the 2019 manual uniform control devices for which FDOT does that. And 19 is different than 14. And under 14, you could have the sign and the beacons flashing. The new rules issued by FDOT on a state highway is one of the two. So we're staying with the beacons. We can't do beacons and the sign. So we're doing what's permissible and within budget. We're some other things if we can get, the signals, the pedestrian activated push buttons, if we can get those to be backlit or whatever. So as you drive down the corridor, you'll see the location also lit before activated. You'll see a little light or some type of glow from the pedestrian. We're trying to find those type of retrofits or an existing product to get some additional lights, especially for nighttime. So if a walker goes up to it, they could see the button.
Well, to me, that sounds quite satisfactory. Again, capability, staying within FDOT suggestions or code, as well as funding, the cost and all. So it seems like, yeah, it's not the Cadillac, but it is definitely more than good enough for what we're trying to do without going forward with phase 2 at this time. Phase 2 can go forward. Maybe it's next year, maybe it's the year after, but clearly that would be a separate project. So, okay, I want to follow up on that. So I'm good with both the roof and the crosswalks as is currently described by what you're saying. Thank you.
John, just for clarity, phase 2 won't be next year or the year after. It won't be until after this triple R initiative is completed.
Correct. Yes. I mean, clearly it's something that we would approve if we approve and go forward with if we have the funding and it's after the triple R is done.
Right, which is, I don't know, 3-4 years out at least.
Mhm.
Very good.
Well, are we
Okay,
even on our schedule at this point?
So we need a motion for 5.1, the building department's proposed budget.
No, this is discretionary sales tax fund budget.
I'm sorry, the sales tax budget, 5.2, discretionary sales tax.
Okay, I move we
surtax.
accept the discretionary sales surtax fund budget as presented.
Got a second?
I'll
I'll
second it.
second. Oh, we tie again.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Peggy, you and
that
I
one
have
is
the
passed.
exact same Belito response time. Again
You're
and
right.
again.
You're right.
Okay, we will move on to a discussion for the acceptance of the water enterprise.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Capital outlay is a significant decrease year over year. We're down about $130,000 on capital expenditures. When we went and did the capital budgets, we moved things around, recognizing potential uncertainties with COVID and then basic needs and when is an actual repair going to be necessary. So we're able to space it out to reduce some of the capital costs there. Operating expenses went up because we have a report we have to get together to EPA that we have to do. Pat's here. Is that every 10 years, Pat? Every 5 years, we got to do the resiliency report? Or risk and resilience update?
That's every 5 years they'll ask for an update.
Yeah, so we bring in a consultant. So that's where the biggest uptick in the operating expenses to accommodate to do that report for the EPA. And then just the natural cost of personnel escalation. So that's what you're looking at in the water. That's the 40,000 foot view. We have all of the sheets in here walking you through the projection on charges for services, other miscellaneous sources of revenue. You'll also see the transfer from the general fund. We always talk about that. That is the transfer to cover our notes, the debt that was issued for the water plant. So we move that in and we collect it under the debt millage on the ad valorem side, and we move it over to the water fund to pay for the debt charges. And then you'll see all of the expenses moved in your sheets on 54 and 55. And then we have kind of a quick one-page budget sheet that shows everything on page 57. So with that, I don't want to, flip through every sheet, but if you have any questions as it relates to any of the detailed worksheets that go into the fund, I'll be more than glad to talk about it. I would anticipate in our conversation today, we're going to say water sewer rate study. Matt and I had a good 2.5 hour conversation last Friday with the consultants. Went into a lot of granular detail, if you will, into all of the documents, the financial models, the projections, the alternatives. Matt really pulled that through with them. We're going to meet again this Friday to do one more go over on the water rate sewer study documents. And they've indicated that the following week, which would be next week, late next week sometime, we should have our document available to share with everyone on the results of that study, for which then it would have to return to the commission for discussion, see if you want to move it over to the FAB for some work on it, and then bring it back. The results, so basically after we do the whole water and sewer rate discussions and we pick a direction, the commission picks the direction on what they want as their final rate adjustments, then we have to, by statute, we'll give you some of those details when we have that meeting. We can't just instantly change those rates. We have to notify the users of the system via the billing cycle, which we do every other month. So there's going to be some timing issues to actually implement our decision. So understand we're probably 2-3 months out from when we can actually implement a rate change. So when you look at this budget, we are going by the current rate study requirements where Matt, it's 3% or the rate of inflation is how that study is. And that's what is reflected on these current rates based on consistent sales year over year. So this budget you're looking at doesn't have increased rates. It has the current rate structure. Once we go through the study review and have those discussions and you guys pick your final choice, then we will go through the process to implement that rate change and put that over to the users. So now I can answer any questions. It kind of gives you the whole structure we're here. So Matt and I are here, Pat's here. We can answer any questions.
Okay, let's open it up. Maybe we'll start with Peggy. Peggy, I'm sure you have some thoughts on this.
I don't have a lot of thoughts on this because it appears to be a very complex matter. I'm interested in the study coming in. I'm going to withhold any further comment until the study comes in.
Okay,
Otherwise, it's a great job on a very, I can see, detailed project. A great job by our staff.
gotcha. All righty, let's move on then. John?
Thank you.
So my question really is, if you can say so, what do you think will be the range of the increase in the water rate? Any advice there?
Yes, so they're looking at a series of alternatives for you to consider. And I don't believe you guys have had the opportunity to truly collectively discuss how much, if you want to move a debt from the general fund entirely into the water fund itself, and how to do that. So one of the alternatives will show that, especially on the water side, and do that over a period of time. So I think they're using a 5-year forecast to, if you want to move it all over, then here's how you would do that. And then they also take assumptions on how much capital investment we make year over year. We do all of that. They do some projections. It's the modeling is great. So you're looking at probably, a 16 to 22% increase each year to move us over the next 5 to get that debt entirely over, and also to cover investment in capital improvements year over year too, to make sure the plant is operating and all the capital needs are met. And again, they use conservative figures to do that. But right now they're looking at what their alternative is about 5 years if you want to move it all. But you guys can move some, none. You know, that's where the discussion really will occur, is how much, if at all, you want to move it over. And I've heard community, I've heard from commissioners, everybody has a little bit of a different take. So I think this process is going to take us some time to see what exactly we want to do. I sense that we need to raise those rates is where the consensus is. I just don't know how much and how quickly we plan to do that.
Well, from my perspective, just to follow up, the issue is not just the rates. We need the rate increase because we can't continue to operate this, you know, in my mind, at a loss. And we do have a debt. So we have to raise the rates. The question will be, what's tolerable and how much over what period of time? So you're right. My perception is that we have to raise, and the question will be how much. Now, at the same time, you know, I'd like to see more facts about what it costs us to run our own water treatment plant, and how that compares to other like plants in and around Florida, knowing that, you know, water treatment in Florida is, I think, much different than, say, other states. So I need to understand the benchmark for comparison. I need to understand the cost, right down to, you know, how much does it cost per gallon of water versus what other towns pay, as well as, is there anything that we can do to reduce the costs that would be beyond just routine stuff? And then lastly, of course, is just to resolve what the rate increase will be. Okay, that's my perspective on it. Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Yes.
Ellen?
Yeah, I was interested in figuring out how we could move the debt that is really subject to the water enterprise into the water enterprise and make it self-sustaining, so so the people who use it are the ones who are paying for it, as opposed to having it come out of the general fund.
Okay,
And that obviously we have to wait until we get these surveys done.
okay. Greg?
Thanks, Mayor. I don't have a lot to say on the budget. The budget looks pretty similar to last year with the exception of the few capital outlays, which we already knew about all of that. So I think the budget, from my perspective, is fine. And I echo everyone else's sentiments on the survey, and particularly as what Evelyn just said about kind of aligning where the debt should be versus the project itself.
Okay.
One last comment. Mr. Mayor, I think Commissioner David said the right phrase, self-sustaining. I think that's really the goal here. And of course, all of the dependencies that would make that happen. Anyways, that's a good way of describing it, in my view.
Okay. A couple of comments. One, we have been talking about raising the rates for both this and sewage for a year now, maybe even more than a year. I'm extremely disappointed that it's taken this long to get this study completed. Looks like we're still a couple of weeks away. At least we're going to finally get our hands on it. But then it's a process once we get it. Obviously, we need to understand it. We'll want to send it off to the Financial Advisory Board, get them to take a look at it, get their recommendations back. Then we'll have to make decisions on what to do about it. That's a couple of months. Once the decisions are made, then it's another couple of months because we have to advise the community what we want to do. So, I mean, it looks to me as though we're probably, 4 months away from even raising the rates. So it's just a darn shame that this whole thing has taken so darn long. Because one, we're losing revenue all this time. And two, it should have been part of this budget. But it is what it is, so let's deal with it. I'm disappointed that we have to pass this budget now without the increase in the rates. It should have been part of it. So I hope we have commitment from everybody here on this commission that in fact we are going to raise these rates once we get our information and go through the process. So we'll have to make this decision for this budget without it, which is unfortunate. Secondly, I don't know that it has to be self-sustaining. I think those are nice words. Everybody thinks that businesses should be operating at least at a break even or at a profit, but we're not a business. I mean, we talk about how we need to run this place like a business, and I think we should be running it in that fashion, but we're not a business. We're here to service the needs of our community. And part of servicing the needs of the community is supplying good, healthy, quality water. And there is a cost to doing that. So I don't know that it needs to be breaking even all the time. So whether we transfer all the debt over or not is really a separate subject in my mind. And we need to think about whether we want to make it self-sustaining or not, and look at what the costs of that are. If the costs of doing all that put us significantly outside of the range of what other communities are paying for their water, we need to think about it. That's all I'm saying. I don't know that we necessarily have to have the objective of it needs to break even. Just a thought, something to think about. That's all. Okay, those are my comments. In terms of the budget itself, I don't have any questions. Looks good to me. I think, in my opinion, I'm ready to pass it if everybody else is. So if anybody else has any other comments, opened. If not, let's get a motion and move on.
Mayor, if I could add one thing to what Marshall agreed with. What we saw last week in the preliminary view was even with the rate increases that they were talking about in the 16 to 20% range, that after that increase, the town would be sort of middle of the package in comparison to a number of nearby utilities, especially those on the barrier island.
Well, that puts us in very good position then. With that, I would obviously have no problem. Also, there's no magic to 5-year plans. There can be 7-year plans. There could be 4-year plans. So there's a lot to look at and a lot to think about. I'm also very unhappy with the manner in which we charge. And I think that has to be looked at. The fact that we charge all residents a flat $22 plus meter, I think is incorrect. I don't think a 1-bedroom apartment should be paying the same flat rate as a 5-bedroom home. So I think we need to be looking at that as well. I don't think a flat rate on sewage is appropriate either. So I think there's a lot to think about here. So, but that's for another discussion. It has nothing to do with passing this budget. So if there are no other comments, let's have a motion.
I move we accept the Water Enterprises Fund budget as presented.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay,
Greg, you can take the next one.
on to the sewer enterprise, which I would assume is the following page.
Yep, sewer starts on 81. The details start on 81. You have all of the detail sheets, very similar to last year. Some of the changes you will be seeing in there relates to, you'll see an operating increase, which is especially one we should focus on, is that for a period, that's kind of addressing the undercharging done by Delray over a long period of time. They were estimating the amount of sewage that we were moving through, and we came to find out they were estimating. And then they came back and said, we want the 18 months of miscalculated monies, and then moving forward, it changes what our projections are. So what you see now is more of a true cost of disposing of our waste into the Delray system. So that's why you see the big adjustment year over year on the operating side, and it has to do with actually reflecting the actual cost to dispose sewer, where last year was based on a series of estimates. This is more reflective of true cost year over year. So we have that increase. Again, this conversation on the sewer fund is very similar to that on the water, that we have a rate study coming addressing a lot of these issues, that sewer is just basically a flat charge for everybody. And it's not based on consumption or any of those factors, and it is equal no matter where you live or how you live. So those items will be addressed in that sewer study. So we're basically going forward from there. You see the details in those sheets, a little bit of capital that we had discussed, some lift stations, collection piping, and tide flex valves in the storm system. The other point to note is that we have a large project that will modify this in some way, and that is we're televising the current sanitary sewer system. Pat told me we're about halfway through. Maybe not as bad as we thought it could be, but we're not done yet, so we can't really make any conclusions. And that's what the water sewer rate study 2 is trying to estimate the size of a bond issue or a project into that rate structure, that if we had to reline the entire sanitary system, this is what would happen to your rate. So the water and sewer rate study is kind of working on a number that would, if we had to fix it, here's how it would affect the rates as well. So we're trying to incorporate that in that study. That's taken a little bit of extra time to get those kind of factors built into it. But we're halfway. We have some issues, but they're not as bad as we thought they could be. So I would guess it's a little bit sunnier than it's a little bit better, but I don't want to, draw any conclusions until we get that second half completed. And again, we're all here. We answer any questions as it relates to the sewer.
Why don't we start with Evelyn?
Okay, couple of questions. Do we have a way of monitoring individual usage like we do with water?
No, we don't. I don't believe we have. Pat, you can jump in if you want. I don't believe we meter outflows, only inflows. We have a meter on the water side, not on the sewer side.
Okay,
That's
so
correct.
then-
We don't meter the effluent sewer, but we do meter water going into the house. And that's
so
why
that-
if they go by the study and do an average, you'll do the average of your water intake.
Okay, so then we do have to have a flat rate on that because we can't figure out usage. Also, why would we increase the rate that we charge on what would essentially be a capital project for relining the lines as opposed to an ongoing expense?
I didn't catch the question.
Why would we include the cost of relining in a usage charge as opposed to a special charge because it's a capital expense, it's not a normal operating expense?
I'll let Matt answer that one.
Well, we expect this when the study is done. We don't have all the results as mentioned, but we are expecting this to be a rather sizable capital need. This wasn't going to be, $50,000 to fix a pipe or two. We expect this to potentially be in the millions of dollars. We may see in the end better news than that, but it's hard to take a capital project of that size and try and translate that into increasing user fees, especially when it's of a one-time nature. We would tend to use debt to sort of spread that cost out over several years.
Okay, that's essentially what I'm saying, is that you shouldn't increase the usage for a capital expenditure. You should find a different way of financing that capital expenditure. whether it's a special assessment or a debt, but some way other than just putting into the usage fee.
Well, we had anticipated one of the things we were going to ask for as part of the water and sewer study was that change to move from a flat fee to a fee which is on the sewer side based on water consumption. That is pretty much the standard operating billing method for most utilities, especially utilities in South Florida.
That makes sense to me, doing it based on water usage.
Okay.
That's all I had.
Are you satisfied with that answer?
For the time being, yes, till we see what the actual numbers are.
Okay. Peggy?
Yes, sir. I was trying to remember what is the history of this project? Was it scoped before, and what is the approximate age of the system? I do believe I could be wrong, but I do believe from the history of the town that A1A's pipes were laid initially, and then the side streets were connected in at a later date. I'm just wondering if you could recap that.
That's you, Pat.
As far as I know, I think 1970, in the early 70s is when they did A1A with the clay and the other things. The side streets obviously were done a little bit later. I don't have an exact date for you, but they are late 60s, early 70s. So we are, fairly long in the tooth with the system, even though what we've seen so far is not as bad as we thought it was going to be. So like Marshall had mentioned, there is a little glimmer of hope, but like I say, we are not completely done.
Okay, and has anything been done since they were initially laid in? Or is this the first time looking?
No, there are some parts of the sewer system that were lined years ago, a few of the batter parts that had some infiltration. So there are sections that have had work done to them.
Okay, good. And do you feel, just having done partial performance of the work, do you feel that the worst case scenario, which would be all new pipe system, is necessary, or you're saying it's looking a little more hopeful than thought and that wouldn't be probably necessary? I know I'm jumping the gun, but I'm just looking at how you're getting a feel on it.
I am getting the feel that we are in better shape than we probably thought we were. So that's the way I'm leaning right now. But again, we're only halfway. We're getting toward the older part of the system now. So like you said, let's just wait and see.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all for me for now.
Okay. John?
So,
Yep.
can you hear me all right?
Mhm.
No? Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Oh. And can you see me okay? I guess that's the
No.
question.
No.
We see a fan.
Okay, so if I turn, that's interesting because it's on my, it shows all of you, but you cannot see me now?
No, we're
I can
looking
see
at the
you.
ceiling.
No?
Now
We see you, John. We see you.
Okay. All right, I'm sorry about that, folks. Quickly, lift stations seem to be, a critical part in the whole sewage process. How can you give me some? I've never seen a lift station, thank goodness. But can you give me some idea of what's involved in a lift station? Because I have to believe, they break. You have maintenance. How expensive is it, and so forth?
Okay, what a lift station does,
Did you follow
Commissioner,
that?
is all your gravity starts at a certain level, and then it can only gravity so far. Then it goes into a wet well where there's pumps in there that lift the water back up to a different level to send it down the line to another lift station. So it's kind of like a lock system is pretty much what a lift station is. There's two pumps to every station and some controls. And that's what's involved in lift stations.
Okay, so, they're not so difficult to fix. It's basically motors, right?
It's pumps and controls, correct. And there's piping involved.
All right.
And we have 2 lift stations that we have in the capital improvement to raise because they're low. And when we have heavy rains, they get a little bit of water on top of them. So there's 2 lift stations that need to be raised in town. That's lift station 2 and lift station 3. And those are the main 2 lift stations that need a lot of, not a lot of repair, but need to be raised.
So would you describe them as a kind of a single point of failure that would be catastrophic for us? If all of a sudden these lift stations didn't work?
See, but we have things in place. We have contracts with people that have emergency bypassing pumps that I can call a company that can come in and bypass a lift station. But that is the critical part of the sewer system is definitely the lift stations.
So, and I know this sounds crazy maybe and trivial, maybe it shows my ignorance, but I keep hearing and seeing on TV how people are using wipes more often and it's clogging up pipelines and so forth. Do you find that to be an ongoing problem or a new problem?
No, we corrected that problem several years ago, Commissioner, we bought pumps. They're called end pumps, flight end pumps. And what they do is they cut that rag before it goes up in there. So we don't have that clogging problem. Like I know the city of Delray has 1 crew and that's all they do all day is go from lift station to lift station to clean out these wipes that they say are flushable, which is costing this industry billions of dollars a year. And it says flushable on there, but they're not biodegradable. So, but it's not impeding our stations because of the pumps that we invested in a few years ago.
Wow.
Wow, I thought it was kind of crazy, but I'm glad to hear that because I know in some places up in Boston, it's obviously old sewage systems and it's a major headache. It's unbelievable. Okay, the other thing is the outfalls. I know there's a great deal of interest in, being able to deal with the flooding and so forth, but also the pollution that we might contribute as a town to the intracoastal waterway. So, and I know that you've seen probably the suggestions from some of our citizens, one in particular who has given us diagrams and pictures and so forth of kind of collection boxes and grates that would prevent, effluent, bad items going into the intercoastal. Is any of that included in this or is that considered a separate project?
That would be a separate project. And most of those things are for industrial areas. We don't have that kind of pollution here. And with our NPDES program, we monitor these things, we test them. The most that we find in there are soap suds for people washing cars. And there may be a little bit of a residual from maybe after the rain, there might be a little bit, but we really don't have a pollution problem here in Highland Beach because we're residential and we don't have the commercial stuff around to wash into our catch basins.
Well, I think the complaint has been that, you have gasoline, oil from the A1A, you have fertilizer, you have, all kinds of stuff that might be dropped into it's just our contribution to what is already a polluted waterway, right? I mean, nobody will swim in the intercoastal.
You're correct, yes.
Okay, but the point is nothing of that order is included in this budget and that if we were to do something there, we have to look at it as a separate project to be reviewed and approved by the council.
Correct.
So if I could add a little bit to that, we had one of our consultants kind of work from our NPDES permit, National Pollution Elimination Discharge System, mouthful. So required under the Clean Water Act to have that permit in, and it requires us to take steps and monitor a lot of this. We put together an evaluation where it looks at some of the options to do just what you're suggesting. Think of things like bioswales or pre-manufactured sediment control devices. All those things exist. Bioswales require space and land and have to be left alone. Those at times can become maybe not as accepted in some of the residential settings we have. The other ones involve a lot of upfront capital costs, and then there's a lot of maintenance to them. They can be done. It's just a matter of cost. So we looked at some of those, and I think that's down the road for us to begin to take a look at. Do we want to put in some of these BMP controls throughout the community and understand exactly the cost and the efficacy of them? Kind of that cost benefit analysis that, if we're seeing a big sediment problem, then you could put in what they call like an aqua swirl chamber or vortex. But again, you got to empty that on a regular basis. So then the cost and maintenance really start to escalate a bit. And it depends on the flows too. So we're looking at that. Pat and I have talked about it. We just, we're taking, systematic approach to it. So we have a report done. I'm going to say that's we're reviewing that now to make sure it makes sense before I distribute it. So we're working on what those things look like. So in the future, we could start thinking about those things in the capital process, but we're just not there. We recognize that community is talking about it. We want to know what those things, what they look like, what are those costs, and then get it to you so you can really have an educated understanding of certain BMPs.
Okay. All set, John?
Very good. Thank you.
Greg?
Thank you, Mayor. Pat, only question I have is not necessarily on the budget, but more on, have you guys ever looked at or thought about installing one-way valves on where we have our storm water? Because it collects in
Yes.
gutters, right? And then I think a bunch of it dumps into either the lakes or the Bellito Lake or into the intercoastal. And I know in flood times, we get a lot of backing up in the streets. Does that salt water cause any problems? Is that an issue we have that's pending going forward? And are those valves expensive or not that expensive? Is it something we should be considering in the budget or not worth it?
Actually, if you look on the back page, install TideFlex valves. That's what those are. There's two that's going to go into Bellito next year.
Oh, okay.
This fiscal year. And those are inserted at the catch basin, and they're just a rubber flapper. So when the water comes up, it closes like that, doesn't let it come back up into the catch basin. So we do have one installed in Highland Beach Drive already, works fabulously. And there's going to be two on Tranquility next year to put in place.
Great. And does that cover all of the locations, or are you phasing them in over time?
I'm phasing them in the worst sections at a time. That's how I'm approaching this, a couple a year, wherever the worst parts are, which in Bellito happens to be on Tranquility Drive, north and south. For some reason, those two places, the water comes up there the most on that island.
Yep, exactly. And then what's the rough cost of each of them?
I think they're like 4,000 or 5,000 a piece. I think I got 25 in there. They're about 10 to 12 to install. 10 to 12,000 a piece to install.
Got it. So your phase in is a time commitment issue, or is it a money issue, or is it both?
It's both. Actually, it's both.
Okay. Got it. Thank you. No additional questions.
Okay. I've got a question on the budget itself. If we look over at the revenue side, the 733,000 that we're pulling from reserves, I'm assuming that is to cover the revenue shortfall that's produced partially by the $200,000 increase coming out of Delray, as well as the $450,000 capital expenditure?
That is correct, Mayor. We have not only a higher monthly bill from Delray, but we owed $215,000 for
The back bill.
it's about 18 months. We split it over 2 fiscal years. We're making 2 payments of roughly $52,000 in the current year, and we'll be making 2 payments of about 53,000 in next fiscal year.
Yeah, that was the deal we cut with them, so we didn't have to write one big check.
Correct. It made sense because we're being underbilled to take it from reserves for that portion of it. And we have traditionally used reserves as the funding source for capital projects as well.
Yeah.
So between that higher expense for the repayments to Delray Beach and the increase in capital costs, that's why you're seeing a higher use of reserves in this year compared to last year.
Yep, thanks for the explanation. It also shows, though, even on an ongoing basis, we're going to have a revenue shortfall unless we increase these rates.
All right.
Significant one. Just with the 25% increase from Delray, you know, the 955 over the 750, we got ourselves a challenge if we don't have a significant increase in rates. I mean, right, just going in, you got a $200,000 shortfall with no capital expenditures.
I would point out, one thing to point out is that in spite of that situation at the end of the prior fiscal year 19, we did add roughly $300,000 to reserves as a result of revenues versus expenditures. But we didn't have quite as significant capital needs in fiscal year 19 as we're seeing
Right.
fiscal year 21.
Yeah.
That's the big
Sure.
difference.
Yeah, that's a big help, big help. Okay, that was all I had. Thanks for the explanation.
I have a question. Is there a way to monitor our bills from Delray so we don't have this happen again?
Yeah, I'll speak on behalf of Pat's strategy. It's been very helpful to us. Our crew goes out and takes a daily read at all lift stations and that over to Delray. So when they hit us with the bill, we had data to double check those costs and charges. So we were able to, I was very pleased that we had those records and we undertake that activity on a daily basis. So we do it every day.
Good, because we don't need another surprise from Delray.
We don't, but I suspect we will have more surprises down the road.
Thank you so much.
I'm sorry, that wasn't nice, but reality is reality.
Got it.
Okay, any more questions on anybody's mind on the sewer enterprise fund? No? Okay, we need a motion to accept.
Greg, this is you.
All right. I move to accept the sewer budget as proposed.
Okay, got a second? I'll second it. Seconded. All in
There you
favor?
go.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. So fast. Okay, let's move on to item 7, which is the discussion on the tentative mill rate for fiscal 2020-21. Marshall, I'll turn it over to you.
I'll turn it over to Matt. Go for it, buddy.
Well,
You passed that one off quickly.
That's okay. That's all right. You have seen in the number in that presentation that we've done, I don't know, about 4 or 5 times now, what the millage rate is, and it's basically flat. It is exactly flat on the operating side at 3.2294 mils. That is an increase over rollback of about 1.66%. That's what property owners will see when they get their trim notices in the next coming weeks. The amount for debt service is basically at the rollback rate, which would mean there was a very slight reduction due to growth in the tax base. That was a change of 0.0199 mils, not a very significant change, but it does offset the growth in the taxable assessed value. So that is what we proposed at the not to exceed millage rate resolution that was adopted by the commission back in July. That's what will go out on the trim notices sent out by the Palm Beach County property appraiser. And that's what we continue to recommend to the commission.
Any discussion on anybody's part?
One question.
Go
The
ahead.
fact that we have to make an additional payment on the sewage rate, does that affect our overall budget? And could the budget be increased because of that?
No, they
Well,
grabbed the
that-
surge for it.
That is built into it. And when we're talking rate, that is specifically for the town's general fund. The sewer fund is a separate enterprise fund, and the reserves in the sewer fund, those specific reserves, separate and apart from the reserves of the general fund, are being utilized to make that payment for the prior period for the city of Delray Beach.
Okay,
So the answer is no.
the answer is no.
I'm sorry.
Anybody have any
Rebecca.
other-
No.
Anybody have anything? Just jump in if you have any questions or comments. Okay, Matt, you got it. Do you need a motion?
I believe we do.
Okay, I'll make the motion that we accept your recommendation to go with the millage rate that was formally established.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Is there anything anybody else would like to discuss before we adjourn? No? Okay, it is 1:30. Oops, go ahead.
I-
Peg. Yep.
I
Peggy?
do. Yes, sir. At 2:00, I'll be involved in the League of Cities voting meeting, as you all assigned me to be a delegate. So I will have a report at the next meeting on that.
Okay, I wish on the first item you vote yes, on the next two vote no. And just don't spend any money, Peggy.
No, sir.
Right on money.
I will add that there's a chance I'll be diving Yamato Rock this weekend and possibly taking pictures from underwater. So if we have weather and tides permitting, I'll make sure to get those photos to Marshall to if they can be of any help as we look at that project going forward.